All right, ladies and gentlemen, today's lesson to put into your table of contents is learning how to solve for y equals. Since we've been learning how to graph using slope-intercept form, y equals mx plus b, we need to learn to be able to do some algebra to solve for y equals. So that's what needs to go in your table of contents. Catch up the other pages. You'll notice we're at the end of our second page of table of contents, up to page 5960. And after the video lesson, you're going to be able to put your notes into page 59 and 60. Very simple. Just half a sheet goes on page 59, half a sheet goes on page 60. So, without further ado, this is the first note sheet we're going to work with. You're going to notice at the top it says we're going to use algebra to be able to transform any equation that you run into. We need to get it in the form y equals mx plus b so we can graph it using slope-intercept. So, solving for y equals. We've done a lot of solving to get x by itself. This is going to be a tad strange in the beginning because you have to switch your thinking to get y by itself now, alright? So when I say solve for y equals, we do need to get it straight in our head that we're going to get y by itself. The good news is we're going to still use inverse operations or opposite operations. You're going to start out by adding or subtracting, and then sometimes we have to divide if there's a coefficient in front of y. The first example does not have a coefficient. We just have a positive 1y, so this is going to be just one step in solving. One thing you can do is you can still draw your locker underneath the equal sign so you can keep yourself organized. You're going to see that on the side with our y value, remember we're solving for y with these, we have this positive 3x. So the nice thing about these is you know to move that 3x, you can subtract it away. 3x minus 3x is no longer there. We got our y by itself. We have our equal sign. The only thing we need to be very, very careful with is this over here. Can we combine x's with plain numbers? No, you can only combine x's with x's and plain numbers with plain numbers. So we have two ways we could write out our solution. We could just say 6 minus 3x like this, or we can say the negative 3x is going to sit here, and the positive 6 is going to sit back here. Notice I didn't change my signs, I just changed where they were going to sit. We need the number here because we are going to be graphing our line. And when you graph, remember, you have a y-intercept, our b value, and you have a slope right here. So if we want to graph our line, it's probably better if we put it in this format with the x term first so we can grab our slope. This is how we're going to move between our points. This is where we're going to begin graphing. So positive 6, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. And then we need to do a negative 3 rise, 1, 2, 3, and a positive 1 run. 1, 2, 3, positive 1, 2, 3, positive 1. Continue across your graph until you have points that line up. Also verify when you're graphing that if your line has a negative slope, it really is sloping negatively. Slope dude would say nice negative. Besides connecting with the ruler and putting arrows at the ends, remember you need to label with your equation. You have two choices. You can label with the equation that was originally given to us, 3x plus y equals 6, or you could label with the equation that you transformed. And this is a very valuable equation because, again, you can grab the slope and y-intercept and get it graphed. Example 2. This one's going to involve more work because, as you can see, we do have a coefficient in front of our y term. Again, change your thinking. You're getting y by itself. Eventually, we're going to have to divide by this negative 3. Before that, we do have to move this term to the other side. So notice that we're looking at a positive 1x. To get rid of that positive 1x, you're going to subtract 1x from both sides. This cancels out. You have negative 3y. Bring down your equal sign. And again, what we're going to do is we're going to put our x term in the front. We're going to put our plain number in the back. So eventually we'll have our y-intercept where we want it and we'll have our slope. This equation, remember, is going to involve two steps. We moved our term by adding or subtracting, but now we have to divide by our coefficient. Remember, in the directions up here, it says move the x term using opposites, and then divide by the coefficient of y. Coefficient, remember, is the number in front of y. It's stuck to it by timesing, so we're going to divide what I want you to notice is I've divided each term by -3. That's what needs to happen when you're solving an equation. It has to be even all the way across the board. So this, -1x divided by -3. You're going to just look at the number parts right now. -1 doesn't divide by -3 evenly, but we do know that a negative divided by a negative forms a positive 1/3. So you are going to use 1/3 and leave it in front of x because that's going to be your slope that we utilize in a few minutes. Over here we have our positive 9 divided by -3, which gives us -3, and you can write it with just a minus sign. So your y-intercept to graph is going to be this -3, and your movement, your slope, this time is a positive 1/3. So remember, the top of the fraction controls your rise. So from our y-intercept, we have to rise 1, and then we're going to run 3. So rise 1, run 3. You'll notice that this line is not as steep as the other one. The other one's steeper because we had a rise that was 3 boxes and a run that was only 1. This is a rise of 1 box and a run of 3. So again, you're going to connect with your ruler. You're going to make sure that you have arrows at both ends, and you're going to label with the original or the transformed equation. Okay. Your second page that's going to go in your notebook looks like this. You have 2 more examples. We do have a coefficient in front of y. Remember, that's really a -1 attached to the y, so eventually we're going to divide by -1. We're going to start out by moving the x term to the opposite side. We want this to say y equals, and we don't want the x term here anymore. So a positive 2x, you're going to minus 2x. You have -1y. You have -2x we're going to put in front of the +4 because we cannot combine x's in plain numbers. And then to finish out, we have this -1 coefficient that we need to divide by. That's attached by multiplying, so we always do the opposite and we divide. -2 divides by -1 and gives you +2. +4 divides by -1 and gives you -4. So remember, this is your y-intercept. This is your slope. If you recall, when you have a whole number, you can always put a 1 under your slope, and that allows you to have a rise and a run. So our y-intercept, remember to always go to your y-axis. We have to go down to -4, and then we can begin our movement, which is rise 2, run 1. Continue across the graph. Connect. Arrows at both ends, remember, because it is a line and it is going to continue forever and ever. And you need to show that you know that definition of a line. Copy with the original equation or the one you transformed. Either one is acceptable. Okay, last example. There's lots of values in this question, but the format is the same. Our y term is right here. We need to get our y term by itself. Eventually we're going to divide by 5, but we cannot do that first. We have to move our x term. So 3x is positive, which means you're going to subtract it away. And on this side, we want to put our x term in front of the plain number. So this time they're both negative, so we don't have to worry about messing up our signs. 5 is attached by multiplying, so we're going to divide every term by 5 all the way across. -3 does not divide by 5 nicely, so you're going to leave it as a fraction. That's your slope. We want it to be a rise and a run. X is going to sit right next to your slope, and then you will be able to divide out and get a nice y-intercept of -2. Your slope is negative also, so keep that in mind when you're graphing. You want to make sure that your line is going downhill when you're finished. So my y-intercept again on the y-axis is -2. And from here, I need to do a rise that is negative. So I need to go down 3 and then to the right 5 because the second number is positive. Notice I'm running out of space. So if I look at my pattern the other direction, I could rise 3 and I could go to the left 5. Rise 3, go to the left 5. Your points must line up. If they don't, you know that you've connected them or counted boxes incorrectly, and you'll need to fix it. Let me know if you have questions. Okay, so besides connecting, labeling it with arrows, and the equation, we know that we're going to take our notes, we're going to tape it into your notebook. Remember, page 59, the title should be Solve for Y. And page 60 also, just put 4 small pieces of tape in each corner and you'll have your notes complete. Your next assignment, when you're complete with your notes, looks like this. Be sure to see me and ask questions as needed.